They said he was a quiet man, loved his wife, spent his mornings fishing, and his evenings reading. But when investigators pried open the sealed trunk beneath his camel-colored fishing gear, they didn't find tackle or bait. They found something else. Something that made seasoned detectives recoil. Lake Mead, Nevada, a vast reservoir turned graveyard of secrets. As water levels dropped due to historic droughts in 2022 and 2023, hidden truths once thought buried forever began to surface. First, it was barrels containing remains, then rusted license plates, and then something much more bizarre. A vintage 1990s chest buried beneath decaying camel-colored canvas fishing gear and held shut with marine rope. At the center of this mystery was 64-year-old Glenn Morrow. Glenn was a retired biology teacher from Kingman, Arizona, who had recently moved with his wife, Dana, to Boulder City in early 2020. Locals described him as unremarkable, the kind of man you forget after meeting. Always seen in beige shorts and a faded fishing hat, he was known for two things: his daily solo fishing trips and his seemingly idyllic 38-year marriage to Dana. Dana Morrow was the opposite, lively, social, and avid churchgoer. She posted frequently on Facebook, often tagging Glenn in scenic lake photos or Sunday breakfast snaps. Her last post? A picture of a sunrise over Lake Mead with the caption, "Let the truth rise like the sun." That was dated April 16th, 2023. No one saw Dana after that. When Dana's sister, Carol, reported her missing on April 22nd, Glenn's explanation seemed plausible. She went to visit an old college friend in Colorado. He told deputies from the Clark County Sheriff's Department she needed a break. But that explanation unraveled quickly. Carol had spoken to Dana almost daily, and Dana was not the kind of person to disappear without telling her sister. She had chronic back pain, required regular medication, and had upcoming dental surgery scheduled for April 25th. When deputies arrived at the Morrows' home, they found Glenn relaxed. "You guys want coffee?" he asked. He even offered to help look for Dana's car in nearby lots, suggesting she might have taken a rideshare and left her vehicle behind. But investigators found it strange that Glenn didn't know the name of Dana's college friend. Stranger still, when detectives reviewed Dana's Facebook messages, there was no mention of a Colorado trip. Her last text to Carol, short, tense, simply read, "Don't worry, I'll explain everything soon." Those texts were sent at 4:38 a.m. on April 17th, unusually early for Dana. A welfare check on the home yielded no evidence of foul play, no signs of struggle, no blood. Dana's phone had been turned off, her purse missing. But curiously, her medication for a serious autoimmune disorder remained untouched in its cabinet. Her toothbrush and all makeup had also been left behind. Detectives expanded their search radius and began canvassing Lake Mead, where Glenn often fished. Rangers at the marina recalled Glenn parking there nearly every morning between 6 and 7 a.m., always alone, always with his camel-colored canvas gear. On April 28, 2023, a couple kayaking near Government Wash stumbled upon something protruding from the sand. As drought had further lowered the lake level, it revealed what looked like an old camping trunk wrapped in canvas and bound with rope. Inside, under layers of silt and decay, was a woman's body, partially mummified by the arid climate. She wore a familiar bracelet, a small golden D charm. The mystery: who was Glenn really? Glenn was arrested the next morning. He denied everything. "That's not Dana. I don't know who that is," he said as detectives showed him the bracelet. But fingerprints and dental records confirmed what everyone already suspected. The body was Dana's. Investigators were now faced with a troubling question. Why would a man with no criminal history, no known financial troubles, and a seemingly happy marriage kill his wife? The autopsy revealed the cause of death: asphyxiation by ligature. She had been strangled with a cord consistent with marine rope, the same kind found securing the canvas over Glenn's gear. There were no signs of defensive wounds or struggle. Toxicology was clean. Dana had been awake, aware. Detectives searched the couple's home again, this time with a warrant. What they found shocked them: a hidden drawer behind Glenn's tool bench, containing a manila envelope of printed images, 1980s mugshots, black and white autopsy photos, and graphic crime scene images. All were of women. Most unsettling was a worn newspaper clipping from a 1991 Denver Post article. Still missing. Rita Coleman, 27, vanished from parking lot. In red pen, someone had circled the words, "No struggle." Glenn had never lived in Colorado, or so it seemed. The arrest of Glenn Morrow stunned Boulder City and quickly captured national attention. How could a quiet man, a retired teacher, loving husband and avid fisherman, end up the prime suspect in his wife's murder? The answer began to take shape the moment detectives dug into his background. On paper, Glenn Morrow was born in 1959 in Laramie, Wyoming. He graduated from the University of Utah in 1982 with a degree in biology and eventually became a high school science teacher. He married Dana in 1985, and the couple relocated frequently. Utah, then Idaho, then Colorado, then finally Arizona. But as detectives retraced their moves, a disturbing coincidence emerged. In nearly every city the Morrows had lived in, there had been a missing woman. And not just any missing woman. Always brunette, between 25 and 35, and often vanishing with no signs of forced entry or struggle. A cold case detective in Denver named Marie Delgado reached out to Nevada authorities shortly after Glenn's arrest made the news. She recognized a 1991 article investigators found in Glenn's drawer. "I've been trying to solve the Rita Coleman disappearance for 20 years, she said. And now, suddenly, her story is in this guy's toolbox. Rita Coleman had vanished in June 1991 after clocking out from her job at a mall in Aurora, Colorado. Her car was found intact, her purse still inside. No fingerprints, no witnesses, no cameras. It was one of 4 cases from 1989 to 1994 involving missing women in the Denver area. None were ever solved. Delgado had her suspicions over the years about a traveling offender, someone who moved often, killed sporadically, and chose victims based on proximity and type. But she never had a name. Now she did. Glenn Morrow. Detectives launched a nationwide request for old case files from any jurisdiction the Morrows had lived in. What they uncovered was haunting. Boise, Idaho, 1986 Karen Dufresne, 29, vanished on a late-night jog. Never found. Salt Lake City, Utah, 1988 Lisa Garrett, 33, disappeared walking to her car after a library shift. Denver, Colorado, 1991 to 1993 Rita Coleman, and 2 others, same profile. Flagstaff, Arizona, 1997 a woman's body found in a ravine, strangled, wrapped in canvas, unidentified to this day. And the most chilling overlap? Every one of those cases took place within a 2-mile radius of a school where Glenn had either worked or applied. With Glenn in custody and refusing to speak, investigators turned to forensics. The chest found at Lake Mead was tested for trace DNA, and it yielded results. Beneath Dana's remains, preserved in the fabric folds, were 3 additional hair strands, all belonging to other individuals. Mitochondrial testing linked 2 of the samples to unidentified victims in Colorado and Utah missing since the early 90s. This pointed to a disturbing reality. Glenn may have used the same chest, or one nearly identical, in more than one crime. Digital forensics added to the horror. On Glenn's laptop, investigators recovered deleted folders containing scanned copies of newspaper clippings dating back decades, all involving missing women. He had labeled the folder Trophies. More damning was a folder titled March Practice. Inside were photographs of Dana, taken without her knowledge, while she slept, cooked, and sat on their patio. One image, time-stamped 2 weeks before Dana's death, showed her tied to a chair, gagged. Authorities now believe Glenn had rehearsed Dana's murder for months. Faced with mounting evidence, Glenn's court-appointed attorney attempted to negotiate a plea, life in prison in exchange for full confessions. The DA refused. Instead, prosecutors decided to try Glenn for capital murder, using Dana's death as the central case, while stacking potential additional charges as new evidence surfaced. But Glenn remained silent. No confession, no emotion. In court, he showed no reaction when photos of Dana's body were shown. No tears, no flicker. He was like a stone, said Detective Megan Rivera. Even serial killers usually crack when their spouse is the victim. But Glenn, nothing. Question marked the questions no one could answer. Why did Glenn kill Dana? Did she find out something? Was she going to leave him? Or was she simply next? One theory came from Carol, Dana's sister. She told investigators Dana had grown distant in the months leading up to her disappearance. She had stopped smiling in photos. In one call, she had whispered, "There's something wrong with Glenn. He's been going out at night again." Detective suspect Dana may have discovered evidence of her husband's past, or overheard something incriminating. Perhaps she confronted him. Perhaps she threatened to go to the police. Whatever the truth, Dana never got to tell it. By October 2023, the Clark County Courthouse was overflowed with reporters, podcasters, and families of cold case victims, all waiting for the trial of Glenn Morrow to begin. Dubbed by media as the Quiet Predator, Glenn was charged with the first-degree murder of his wife, Dana Morrow. But everyone in that courtroom, from jurors to journalists, knew this wasn't just about one murder. This was about decades of silence, shadow, and suspected slaughter. Prosecutors had one mission: prove beyond reasonable doubt that Dana's murder wasn't an isolated act of rage, but part of a long, calculated pattern of predation spanning nearly 4 decades. And they began with the chest. Day 2 of the trial. Prosecutor Lauren Spence wheeled in the infamous camel-colored fishing chest, now sealed in evidence plexiglass. The air in the courtroom thickened. "We're not just trying a man," Spence said, turning to the jury. "We're trying the story he buried." Forensic experts testified to the discovery of DNA from 3 unidentified women on the chest lining. Marine rope matching the one used in Dana's strangulation was also found inside Glenn's garage, with frayed fibers microscopically consistent with those embedded in Dana's neck. They played clips from Glenn's interrogations. The jury heard his hollow denials. "I don't know how she ended up in the lake," he had said. "Maybe someone took her." They also showed the image folder. Dana, tied to a chair, mouth gagged what appeared to be a dish towel. Next to her, a notepad. On it, the words "Tell me the truth" scrawled in shaky handwriting. It sent visible shivers through the courtroom. Midway through the trial, prosecutors introduced pattern evidence from other jurisdictions, an unusual but legally allowed move in Nevada, given the overwhelming similarities in the cold cases. Detective Marie Delgado from Denver took the stand. She recounted the 1991 disappearance of Rita Coleman, showing the same circled newspaper article found in Glenn's hidden drawer. She testified that Glenn had applied for a teaching job at school 2 blocks from Rita's apartment. His application was never followed up. In court, she stared at him. Glenn stared back, expressionless. More detectives followed. Salt Lake City, Flagstaff, Boise. Each had a cold case. Each had a missing woman. Each pointed to a man who was always in the vicinity, but never once questioned. Until now, in a stunning moment, the court heard testimony from Emma Barlow, whose sister Lisa vanished in Salt Lake City in 1988. "I was 15 when my sister disappeared, and I've spent 35 years wondering if she just ran away," she said, her voice shaking. "Now I know she didn't run. She was taken. And the man who took her? He's sitting right there." Other families followed, some with photographs, others with tears. A row of women in court held up faded, missing posters from the 80s and 90s, reminders of how long these cases had gone unresolved. The jury looked shaken. The prosecution brought in criminal profiler Dr. Evelyn Marks to analyze Glenn's behavior. She painted a portrait of a high-functioning organized offender, intelligent, socially competent, but emotionally detached. He picked targets carefully, struck with precision, and erased all connection afterward. "His marriage was a mask," she said. "Glenn Morrow was never a husband. He was a spider. The chest was his web." Dr. Marks explained that Glenn's fascination with crime scene photos, found in that envelope behind the tool bench, signaled a fetishistic obsession with control, silence, and death. One phrase, she said, echoed throughout the courtroom. "This is not a man who snapped. This is a man who practiced." Glenn's public defender, visibly overwhelmed, tried to sow doubt. "No one saw Glenn kill his wife," he argued. "No video, no eyewitness, no confession. just assumptions based on old files and fading memories. But it wasn't enough. When the prosecution rested, they had presented over 48 pieces of physical evidence, 6 cold case links, and 15 witness testimonies, all circling one truth. Glenn Morrow had spent nearly 40 years hiding behind fishing gear, charm, and silence while women vanished. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty, first-degree murder in the death of Dana Morrow. Recommended sentence, life imprisonment without parole. Glenn did not blink. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Glenn simply said, "She knew the rules." Gasps filled the courtroom. The courtroom fell silent as Glenn Morrow was led away in handcuffs. Outside, camera crews waited. Dana's sister, Carol, made a brief statement. "We got justice for Dana, but I know there are others out there whose names we don't even know." That statement would prove hauntingly prophetic, because as the dust settled from Glenn's trial, law enforcement wasn't finished. In fact, they were just getting started. 2 weeks after Glenn's sentencing, Arizona detectives followed up on a bank transfer Glenn had made to a storage facility in Kingman. There, in a climate-controlled unit under his wife's name, they found a second trunk. This one was larger and sealed with 3 locks. Inside, they discovered a collection of driver's licenses and ID cards belonging to missing women from Utah, Colorado, and Arizona. A plastic evidence bag marked Karen Dufresne, Boise PD, which had gone missing from the police station in 1987. A cassette tape labeled Confession, 1994. But when played, only heavy breathing and faint humming could be heard. But most chilling of all, a journal. It wasn't a diary in the traditional sense. It was methodical, cold, dated. Each entry listed a location, a time, a name, and one-word outcomes. Lisa G., parking garage flawless. Rita C., lot B, quiet. Dana, finally hard. There were 12 entries. Only 6 had names that could be matched to known victims. Dr. Evelyn Marks, the criminal profiler who testified at trial, reviewed the journal and spoke to media outlets. "Glenn Morrow may have murdered more women than we'll ever know," she said. This was a man obsessed with silence. Control. He didn't just kill to escape. He killed the perfect. The journal confirmed what prosecutors had suspected. Dana was his final victim, and possibly the only one he had a personal relationship with. The others? Opportunities. Faces. Names. Forgotten moments in city after city where Glenn Morrow vanished without a trace, only to appear years later as a new man with a new job and a new beginning. With Glenn now in prison for life at Ely State Prison, the FBI launched a joint task force with local jurisdictions to examine cold cases connected to his movements. They began DNA analysis on items found in the second trunk. One hair sample matched a 1995 cold case in Nevada, a Jane Doe found near the Hoover Dam. The match brought closure to one family after 28 years. But 5 entries in Glenn's journal simply listed initials, SD, ME, LR, and police had no idea who they were. A public call was made for families of missing women to come forward and submit DNA samples. Over 400 cases were reviewed. 3 new probable matches were found, one as far away as Washington State. Dana Morrow's grave is marked by a small, polished stone in Boulder City Memorial Park. Carol visits often. She told a local news station, "My sister lived with a monster. She just didn't know it. None of us did. He wore beige and went fishing. Who would have thought?" Glenn remains silent behind bars. He has never confessed, never named other victims, never shown emotion. He spends his days in the prison library, mostly reading. And though his case may be closed in court, for investigators and victims' families, the story remains painfully open. So we ask, how many secrets can one man bury beneath camel-colored canvas and a fisherman's smile? In the case of Glenn Morrow, perhaps too many for even time to reveal. He was the quiet husband, the neighbor who waved, the man in church pews, the one no one suspected. And yet, beneath every fishing trip, beneath every ordinary morning on Lake Mead, a brutal secret was waiting to rise.